Okay. Hello everyone, I hope you're doing well and happy Thursday! Today we had episode 4 of Mystic Pop-Up Bar air on Netflix, and I'm super excited to give you my recap of what happened in the episode and my thoughts so far in the series. So with that, let's jump right in. We start the episode where we left off with the bodyguard, now security guard, at the grocery store, breaking up an almost fight between Kang-bae and a customer. Jung-eum, who's the security guard, stops the man from almost hitting Kang-bae, and as they are working through the issue, Choi Jin-dong, who's Kang-bae's other co-worker and also seems to be a friend, comes to tell them that the TV the customer is trying to return is sold only online for half price, and it seems he was trying to return it to the store to get the full price value back, which is pretty much scamming the store. After this discovery, the customer apologizes and leaves, and this is when Yoo-bin directs her attention to Kang-bae, thinking he's impersonating an employee and running a scam, since when she had just met him recently, he was impersonating a bodyguard. Luckily, Woo-ju is at the store and steps in to explain, and with the help of Manager Gui, who makes himself look like the director of the CIA, she convinces Yoo-rin that they were working undercover at the hotel for the CIA or a larger group. Kang-bae, not fully understanding what was going on, is actually shocked to meet the director of the CIA in person. He later tries to introduce himself before finding out it's Manager Gui. That was so funny. After that, Manager Gui and Won-ju head back out into the store to go shopping. They explain later in the episode, but they're getting supplies to make and sell food at an afterlife field event where the winner can go into their descendants' dream and give them the upcoming numbers for the winning lotto ticket. Since Woo-ju can assist with the dream part, and this is an easy way to meet her quota, they help out at the event. And that way she doesn't have to hear anyone's sob story. It's great for her. While at the store, Woo-ju ends up taking all the noodles the store has, since she has to feed a lot of people. However, there's also an older woman who's needing some noodles as well, and this woman tries to convince Woo-ju to give her some of the noodles so that she can make some noodles for her grandson. How many times am I gonna say noodles? Woo-ju at first says no, but after the lady follows her around the store a little bit, she decides to just try and take some of Woo-ju's noodles from her cart. Woo-ju catches her and they start to argue about it. This is until age is brought up, and even though the older woman is trying to play the age card, she ends up complimenting Woo-ju, saying she only looks 20-21 and has really nice skin, which makes Woo-ju change her attitude towards the woman immediately. Woo-ju grabs a few bags of noodles from her cart and asks the lady if this is enough. And then later we see Woo-ju and the older woman sitting outside of the store having a drink together that Woo-ju purchased as a peace offering. As they're outside talking, the older woman tells her story about her life and how when she was young, she wasn't well off, and how her grandson loves the simple noodle recipe that she has and makes for him. After this, the older lady asks why Woo-ju needs all the noodles, and she says it's for an event she's going to work to make some money. And this is when we find out that her grandson is Choi Jin-dong, and she offers to set Woo-ju up with him. Woo-ju says thanks, but no thanks, and I gotta go. After this, we see Woo-ju and Manager Gui getting ready for the event. Woo-ju asks Manager Gui out of nowhere what he was in his past life. He goes to try to remember, but before answering, asks why she wants to know. She says she thought he might have been educated since he has such nice handwriting. Kind of like shocked, he responds that he paid to take classes and the supplies came with the purchase. Woo-ju then responded that makes more sense since he didn't seem like he could be a nobleman. This was obviously meant to be a diss, so she just got Manager Gui right then. Manager Gui reacts like, geez, like, why you gotta be so mean all the time? And it seemed like he was about to tell her something about who he used to be, but decides against it. They then get back to checking off all the stuff they need to get ready for the event, and that's when we find out that Kang-bae is actually going to be helping whether he knows it or not. That evening, we see Kang-bae following Yerin after work, and he's trying to muster up the courage to touch her again to see if his powers work on her this time or not. He just can't believe that she doesn't have any burdens and that could be why his affliction doesn't work on her. So he wants to test the theory out. Before he can do this, she stops and surprises him and asks what he's doing and why he's following her. He says they're just going in the same direction, and that's when she tells him, if that's the case, walk ahead of me. So he starts to walk ahead of her, but then stops and turns around and asks her if he gives her any sort of feelings. You know, like feelings like, do you want to tell me something feelings? She says that she does have feelings, and he's like, aha, I knew it. But then she tells him that those feelings are annoyance, frustration, discomfort. She's not feeling good about him, basically. After that awkward conversation, Kang-bae heads to the pop-up bar, and when he enters, he becomes very confused because he seems to have been transported to a field in the dream world. It's then explained to him that it's a field day for spirits, and whoever wins gets to enter their descendants' dream and give them the upcoming winning lotto ticket numbers in their dream. This is also when he officially meets Death, who has technically met him before since he was the one that helped his landlady cross over, but this is the first time that Kang-bae has actually seen Death. And though Death is very nice, Kang-bae is obviously very freaked out once he realizes, oh, this is Death. Of course, you see Woo-ju just glaring daggers at Death, and Death like, why are you glaring at me? What did I do? While serving food at the event, Kang-bae meets his coworker Jin-dong's great-great-grandfather Choi Suk-pan, and Kang-bae tells him that he knows and works with Jin-dong, and apparently that's who Suk-pan is going to give the lotto number to if he wins, since he knows his living family is struggling and he wants to try to make up for the fact that when he was living, he obviously wasn't well off. So he wants to be able to pass something on to his descendants to help them. And this lotto ticket is the answer. We then see Suk-pan with his grandmother, who he obviously lives with and who we met before. And you can tell just how much he loves her because apparently he's been saving up money for her so that she can have back surgery. She gives him back the money, saying he shouldn't spend his money on her and the surgery wouldn't be effective anyway since she's so old. But you can tell that he loves his grandma and she loves him and she just wants him to be happy and she wants him to get married, especially since he's almost 30. Meanwhile, in the dream world, Suk-pan is doing really well in the competition and ends up being one of the last spirits standing. In the last event, he goes up against another spirit who is of noble birth and actually has been cheating the entire time during the field games. Suk-pan wins fair and square and afterwards goes into Ji-dong's dream with Woo-ju's assistance and gives Suk-pan the winning lotto numbers, which that whole dream sequence was very simple yet also so funny. However, while this is going down, Death is checking the list of people he needs to deal with tomorrow, and it seems that Choi Jin-dong is on that list and is apparently going to die the next day from an accident. Through being a little bossy and nosy, Woo-ju finds this out, and when Suk-pan is told, he pleads with them to save his descendant and not let him die. I mean, he just gave him the lotto tickets. What kind of luck is this? You could tell that Death was already feeling kind of bad about this when he was looking at the list. So he tells them that there may be a way to keep him alive. They could plead with God, but because Suk-pan doesn't have a lot of good deeds from when he was alive, that isn't gonna work. But Death tells them that if they are able to find someone who's connected to Suk-pan's family and they would be willing to trade their good deeds for something of value, that would work. But it has to be given to Death before the time Jin-dong is supposed to die, of course, which that's not a lot of time. At first, Woo-ju sees this as a lost cause and doesn't want to help. But after Suk-pan pleads with her, reminding her how family is so important and that he would go to hell for them if it would help, she's reminded of her mother and agrees to help. And they plan to trade the lotto number that he won for the good deeds. Which that means that the numbers that Ji-dong saw in his dream are now invalid and not worth anything, but at least he'll be alive. That's what really matters. Their first step is to find someone connected to the family who has a high amount of good deeds under their belt, which apparently is better than money in the afterlife, and the more good deeds you do while living means that you'll be reborn wealthier and in a better state. So it pays off if you're reborn, if you're a nice person in this life. I like that. They go to the afterlife city hall to find out who in the afterlife would be a match, and this is when they find out all of this information has been digitized recently by a new employee who's really good with computers. They then show a guy who I'm pretty sure is supposed to be Steve Jobs working at a computer nearby and eating an apple. Like, if that's not obvious, I don't know what is. Like, he's got the sweater and everything. It was super funny. He digitized the afterlife. Good for you, Steve Jobs. They find someone with a lot of good deeds named Lee Kuk-sun, who knew Ji-dong's grandmother when she was alive. They go to visit her where she works at the afterlife orphanage, and while they waited for her, they go and make lunch for all the kids that are at the orphanage. And when they explain what's going on, she immediately says she'll help since she owes Ji-dong's grandmother everything. They don't go into why, but all that matters is that she's willing to give her good deeds for the cause. Woo-ju gives her the lotto ticket even though she doesn't want it, but apparently she has to take it for the trade to be valid. Now that they have the good deeds, they get to the ferry to head back to the living realm, and this is when we find out that Kang-bae is actually an orphan himself. Since after they visited the afterlife orphanage, he was happy to hear that eventually all the kids there will be reunited with their parents when their parents pass away, whereas in the living world, that's not usually the case, at least not for him. So he was happy to hear that those kids will one day be reunited with their parents, unlike he was able to. After we find that out, we see the nobleman who had lost at the field day waiting at the ferry as well, and he sees the good deeds in Woo-ju's pocket and goes to steal it and runs away. Manager Gui goes after the spirit, and Kang-bae and Woo-ju head back to stall death, since that's all they can really do in this situation. Since they know it's gonna be an accident, Kang-bae spends all day helping his coworker and trying to block any possible accidents heading towards him while they're at the store. Even though his death isn't until later in the day, I guess you can't be too careful. It was cute to watch, but also it didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Whatever. Once Death arrives at the store, Woo-ju works to keep him outside as long as possible, but eventually he does get inside, and while Kang-bae and Ji-dong are in the warehouse, Death has a cart of items charged towards Ji-dong to cause an accident that's meant for him to be killed by. Also, did anyone else see the labeled boxes that just say no brand on them? Sung-bae sees the cart heading towards his friend and goes to shove him out of the way, kind of knocking him unconscious. Sung-bae, in a panic, kind of slaps him awake a little bit, and because he's now touched him, Sung-bae ends up hearing how Ji-dong has had a huge amount of blind dates and none of them have worked out, and he's kind of worried that he's ugly and is never gonna find love. Especially, I mean, his grandma really wants him to get married, so obviously he's been trying, but failing. Poor guy. After this, Death obviously tries again, but Woo-ju intercepts and ends up wrestling him to the ground. I'm sorry, it's just really funny. Because Woo-ju is making the accident not happen, Death has no choice and changes it on the iPad to heart attack, which Woo-ju blocks a few of his heart attack death throws as well. However, the last one, she isn't able to get back up in time, but that's okay since for some reason, something else starts blocking Death's powers. He's trying to like throw them out and they're just little sparks, like they're not coming, it's not happening. Right at this moment, the new security guard for the store, Yu-rin, walks into the warehouse after hearing all the commotion and goes to check on everything. Everyone kind of hides, so she doesn't see everybody in there, but it seems that anything magical is blocked while she's around, since we now see that Death isn't able to work his magic until she leaves the warehouse. In fact, she walks through him and makes him feel kind of gross. Thankfully, this was enough time for Manager Gui to catch the spirit and get the good deeds back, because he arrives just in the nick of time, looking wet and very heroic, I may add. Just slow motion, hair, water, everything. We see in an earlier scene, after he's gotten the good deeds back from the nobleman, he realizes that the ferry isn't going to be there for another 2 hours. And since he didn't have that kind of time, he decided to just jump in the river and swim to the living world. So Jidong is left alive and just in the nick of time. Yay! The lotto tickets aren't good anymore, but you know, he's alive, that's all that matters. Also, his grandmother's friend visits his grandmother in her dream and heals her back. Apparently she traded the lotto ticket for some magical orb thing that she uses to heal her friend. And yeah, kind of a happy ending for the family, I would say. And the episode doesn't end there, because before the end of the episode, we see the Mystic Pop-Up Bar gang at work. And while there, Kongbei comes in from sweeping outside and is really, really sick. They're thinking he's just overworked, but who knows? Wooju goes to take him home, and after they've left, Death comes to the bar. He mentions seeing them and is surprised by Kongbei, since he's alive but had just been all over the afterlife and dream realm and even across the river to the living world, which sucks a lot of energy. So, you know, he's very fascinated by Kongbei for sure. Like, yeah, he's not feeling very well and it could be being overworked, but I feel like Death may know a little more about the situation. I think it is because he was going between the afterlife and the living world. I mean, yes, he was in the dream world for a little bit, but it even said he was in the afterlife. So he went to the afterlife. Death chats with Manager Gui and gives him the update on the spirit he captured, and they talk a little bit about Gui's past and how he used to work for the Afterlife Police as a detective squad chief, chasing after bad spirits. So it seems something might have happened and he's either being punished or something really bad happened and he's sort of taking a break. My vote is the latter, since Death says he talked with the Afterlife Police Chief and he had mentioned reinstating Gui. Gui says this is too soon for that, and that's kind of the end of the conversation regarding him going back to the police force. Death does ask him to do him a favor and go chase down an evil spirit nearby, since he's still recovering from Wooju attacking him. So we get to see a whole other side to Manager Gui and his skills at taking down evil spirits, which was pretty scary. He was dressed all in black with like a cool scythe thing, flaming scythe. It's pretty awesome. It's pretty cool. Meanwhile, Wooju is tucking Sung-jae into bed at his place, and as she gets up to make him something to eat so that he can take medicine later, he takes her hand and asks her not to leave him in his sleep. This is when we flash back to when Wooju was healing the prince back in the day, and it seems this reminds her of her time with him. This is also when we see that there is more to what happened after Wooju hung herself from the spirit tree. We see the prince with a huge sword covered in blood at the tree crying, saying he couldn't save her after all. This is when we see him swear that he'll find her in the next life and do whatever he can to protect her, even sacrifice his soul. And that's how episode 4 of Mystic Pop-Up Bar ends. For a show with a very simple formula, I am honestly really enjoying that they aren't being too basic with the cases or people that are coming into the bar. I mean, this one, they weren't even at the bar. I like that they're not just doing a person comes into bar, we hear the person's problem, we get the person drink, we go into the dream, chaos and comedy ensues, drama, happy ending. Like, it's a little different than that, and I, as the viewer, am thoroughly enjoying it. I also really enjoyed finding out the new details about the characters, especially Manager Gui. Seeing that sort of action-y side of him was great. Though I did see a few of them coming, I'm still enjoying the series. The actors are doing a really good job, and that can make up for some of the more basic storylines in my book. These characters that have been created are just great. I am a little worried about Sung-jae though, obviously, and it's making me uneasy how he's learning all this sort of insider knowledge about how the afterlife works. Like, shouldn't people like death be a little upset that a living person is just traipsing around the afterlife? I guess since he signed the contract, it's fine since he's working for a spirit. I don't know, but I'm also starting to wonder if Sung-jae is possibly the prince reincarnated after that last scene. Another thing I want to add is I laughed so many times during this episode, like out loud cackling. And I had a few tears well up as well, especially when Woo-ju's character was starting to get emotional listening to the spirit's plea for her to save his great-great-grandson. I also really liked the positive message that they give towards the end of the episode about being kind to one another. I think that was very purposeful given what everyone's going through right now, and I really appreciated it. So with that, I'm gonna end this video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it and this was helpful, and I'll see you in the next video. Until then, bye.